This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
First of all, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us here on our preview special. What does it mean for you to officially be the voice of the Arizona Diamondbacks?
It's honestly something that still hasn't quite sunk in. I mean, you work towards major life goals, and for me, as a minor league broadcaster, if I could just make it to the major leagues one day, that would have been such a dream. And to do it for my hometown team, frankly, my favorite baseball team, I still, almost 4 months in, I haven't quite gotten over it. It's such a blessing, and I'm so excited to be here every day.
And from the time you got the job until now, and going through the postseason run last year, what has it been like to get to do this job?
It feels lucky, I'll tell you that much, right? I mean, timing is everything in life, and to have joined a team in 22 that really made nice strides after a frustrating 2021 season, and then to go from that team to a National League champion, a team that was playing in the World Series, playing meaningful baseball on November 1st, and to now see all these wonderful moves that this organization and front office has done, I go back to what I said at the beginning. I feel really lucky to see this team, and like all of us, see what they're capable of starting this year.
Had I told you last year, the last 4 games of the regular season, the Diamondbacks would be in the World Series, you would have told me what?
You should probably find another job because, right, journalism's about honesty and integrity. And no, I think everyone, including the players, those last 4 days looked at the situation and just thought, okay, we're in, let's see what happens. Let's use this as a building block to go into 24. And I think being so relaxed and just letting all those other things like expectations and pressures go allowed them to play the best that they could. And they know what's in there, and they know it plays at the highest level of this game.
For you, what was it like calling the playoffs and specifically getting to say the Diamondbacks are going to the World Series?
Oh my gosh, that is something, again, where you look at the big markets and the big teams and the storied franchises, and those are the ones that get to the World Series frequently. And for teams like the Diamondbacks, it's about not only doing things the right way and building things the right way, but also a stroke of luck here and there, right? Things have to kind of fall into place. And so to watch this team do what they did and to be in a position where I can say, ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, Game 1 of the World Series, I thought that would happen in my 50s. I thought that would that's nothing against anybody. That's just me, a pessimist, being disappointed in so many what felt like optimistic sports years in Arizona. And to be able to have said that, even if we never get back, which I think we will, but even if we never do, to have that for the rest of my life, I will cherish that until the last of my days.
So you're a tortured Arizona sports fan like the rest of us?
I mean, aren't we all? It's whether it's the Super Bowl, Santonio Holmes 1 foot down, that's pretty well established, right? Suns up 2-0. I would say it's heartbreak, but I already have shattered pieces on the floor, so I don't know how much worse it can get. But that's who we are, right? That's what brings us together, and that's why when these teams go on these runs, Mark, it's the most wonderful, enjoyable experience. And even I remember loving it as a kid, and now sometimes sports fades in your 30s and your 40s, and for me, my passion is just as strong as when I was 6 and 7 years old.
What were those moments like in the minors, wondering if you'd ever get hurt?
I mean, it was something where I knew it was necessary because especially, those first 3-4 years, I wasn't good enough. And I hold myself to a high standard. And sometimes it's really hard after games to enjoy the broadcast because I feel like I could have done this better or I could have said that better. And I'm working on that, right? But for me and what I want our listeners to know and our fans to know, I want to be the best. And I want fans, hopefully, not to listen because of me, but when they do hear me, I want them to think that we've got a great broadcaster and we've got someone who cares about our city and cares about this team. Because I do. I lived it. I supported it. I was in there as a fan, just like everybody else. And now I'm the lucky SOB who gets to actually sit behind the scenes and describe what's unfolding before our very eyes.
You sound like your grandfather.
I don't know about that. I mean, he was the best in so many ways, but the one thing that we have a similarity towards is he effortlessly made people have such a wonderful time. I make it look effortful, but I do try to make people laugh, and to make people smile, and I want people to have a good time, because honestly, deep down, even though the hair's going back and the waist is getting a little bit bigger, I'm still the happy, joyful kid that I was, that was just, glad to be a part of anything. And I hope that when people listen and follow along, if they see me, come up and say hello. I want to know who you are. I want to know where you're from, how long you've been supporting the team. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's a whole life. I don't care. You're here. It's baseball. And people are rediscovering how great that is. And I hope that I can help be part of that process.
What was your earliest memory coming to the ballpark with your grandfather, with your dad? What's it mean to have the family name going to the broadcast booth?
Yeah, so the earliest memory for me, I do remember day one, right? Inaugural game, 98. And I remember the presentation of the trophies that they give out. I don't remember the name of them. Ooh, I should probably learn that. But I do remember all of the fanfare, and I remember the first pitch being thrown. You remember this too, going to games. All the cameras people had. And so the flickering lights around the stadium back before people had smartphones and things like that. So I remember that. And then from what my parents tell me, I fell asleep by the third inning. And my sister had to carry me out of the stadium at the end of the game. She said it was trying to lift antimatter, which is not a nice thing to say about your little brother. But so there's that. But some of the memories you're talking about, I remember going to games with my grandfather before he retired. My favorite memories, like my all-time favorites, when my dad was still the general manager, probably about 2000, 2001, I had the confidence in the middle of games to go up and sit in the general manager's suite. And it was him, and it was Mike Rizzo, and it was Bob Miller, and Sandy Johnson. And I would sit next to them, and my dad taught me how to score games. Now, he's a little more meticulous than I was, but he had a little mini fridge back there. I probably had one too many Mountain Dews, and I would watch the game, and he put on a really good poker face, because losing is the worst when you're in those positions, but he never showed anything. It was like, it's baseball, and it's family, and we're all there together. And if I could have a time machine, I would definitely want to go back and soak those up a little bit more.
When did you first realize you wanted to broadcast?
When I realized I couldn't play. When I was in high school and guys were zipping 93, I was like, I suck. I can't do this, right? And it made me fall out of love with baseball, because of my own insecurities. But I went to a school in Trinity University where it's a little bit smaller, but they had great newsrooms and, great athletics programs, and nobody was doing that stuff. And I said, can I just get like an internet stream? Yeah, go for it. We love it. And I was awful, but I had so much fun being terrible at broadcasting that it made me want to try and get better. And so I spent 2 years. I helped build what's called the Tiger Network at our university, where now kids are learning not just how to broadcast, but the behind the scenes, how to run a board, how to set up a broadcast, how to make sure that all these graphic packages work. And it allowed me to look into opportunities where I could maybe broadcast professionally. And for me, I graduated. I worked for the Reds because I wanted to go somewhere I'd never been and figure out things on my own. And through working with the great people in Cincinnati and the Reds organization, I went to their minor league affiliate. I got to broadcast 3 innings every home game, which felt like 9 innings on, day-night doubleheaders. And the guy I studied for eventually became the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, replacing Marty Brennaman. So again, it's a little bit of luck, and it's a little bit about being in the right place at the right time, because I was just looking for an opportunity. And I got to learn from some of the best people who wound up being some of my best friends in the game.
What was it like getting the call to come home?
I remember landing, because I took an overseas trip. My now fiance, she'd never left the country before. I said, all right, when COVID restrictions are gone, we're going to do this, because I love traveling and I love exploring. And I remember we were in, I think, Dulles in DC, and hey, my boss said, call me, I want to tell you some news. We're going to hire you. You're going to be the pre and post voice for the Diamondbacks. Playing it all cool, it's a great opportunity, thank you, sir. And I hung up the phone and I just slumped on the floor. And I just, I started getting choked up, because it was like, this is what you work towards, right? And people have goals, right? But everyone has a big goal. And I never thought, I hoped I would make it, but there's no guarantees, right? This is a competitive industry. And when I found out it was going to be this team, and I was going to see my family again and my friends after not seeing much of them for like 10 years. Yeah, that was, I get emotional thinking about it, man. That was a really special day.
I remember talking to your dad about it and how excited he was. What do you think your grandfather would say?
Oh, man. He was really proud when I told him that I was getting into it, right? And in the minors, and he unfortunately passed right before my first season in 2017, but my grandmother, right, his wife Audrey, she was able to listen for about 3 years. And so I know that the two of them, I mean, they were just connected, right, even after death. And so having her listen felt the same as having him listen. And I took a lot of pride in that. And it, you know, it goes back to before where I'm a little hard on myself at times and I don't maybe enjoy it as much as I should, because there's a lot of responsibility when you have that guy as a grandfather, you know, a guy who was an inspiration for so many people, more talented than I am. And while I wish I had the opportunity to ask him, hey, how would you approach a player to ask him this? Or how would you describe that? I know that if he were around today to see me do opening day last year in LA, to know that I have made it to the big leagues, he'd probably be emotional too, because he was a guy who just wore those on his sleeve.
And I was very lucky. I got to work with him a little bit. My favorite story broadcasting with him, he was talking about a guy knowing every nook and cranny of Ebbets Field and also every crook and nanny in Ebbets Field. Do you have a favorite story to share with the class?
It's not so much a story, but he would come over, my dad would come over for family dinner on Sundays, right? And baseball was always on. So here's this guy who played in the big leagues, Hall of Fame broadcaster. Here's this guy who, you know, World Series champion general manager, Arizona Diamondbacks. Here's, as I joke, you know, idiot grandson, right? Like I'm 10, 11 years old, just, you know, and like I'm trying to make him laugh. So whoever the situation was, I would think of the most insane thing to do. And, oh, they should do that. Bases loaded, nobody out. Got to put the hit and run on here. He would just be like, Joe, Papa, you got to take risks. You got to take risks. So, I don't know, a few years go by, and I'm not much of a collector, but I'm seeing people collect, and it's a real hobby. And I ask him, hey, one day, would you sign a baseball for me? So I could just have, right? You know, I don't know, month goes by, and he comes over one day, and he's got a baseball, and it says, to the risk taker, your Papa, Joe Garagiola. And I still have that ball. It's in my office. It's on my bookshelf, kind of looking at me. And so again, it's not so much a story, but memento, memory. It's in a long list of favorites. It's one of my all-time.
All right, last question. So does the risk-taking continue into broadcasting? Will you dial it up if a ball is going towards the seats and you want to get creative?
I try to find my way a little bit. You know, a lot of people who I respect, I think that broadcasters at times can all sound the same because nobody ever wants to put themselves out there in a world of social media. And then there's people who go like way too far in the other direction and treat baseball broadcasting like it's stand-up comedy. And for me, I just want to have people listen, and I want them to be like, that's who he really is. If you ever hung out with me outside of a baseball game, right? I don't want to miss a pitch. I don't ever want to insult players because having tried and failed pretty early, I know how difficult this game is. But I joke, I laugh. Baseball is fun, life is hard. This is a 3-hour sort of window that we have to share and just get away from it all. Let's spice it up a little bit, right? We're going to do 162 of these. There's going to be good ones that are easy. There are going to be awful ones that are hard. Let's have some fun, and let's see where this journey takes us. And when it's all done, let's take a break and come back and do it again.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.